Good morning, everyone. So I'm Daisuke Fukamizu of I'm a professor of the Shinshu University and a partner of Nagashima Ono Tsunematsu. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the Japanese Embassy and Shinshu University to be a co-host of this event. And so this is amazing because we had our first workshop here in 3 years ago. So that was our first event. And since then, we continued our effort to develop this platform. Since there's a pandemic, in 2019 and 2020 and 2021, we had our online workshop. But finally, we have an in-person workshop here. And I'm really, really honored to be here again. And thank you very much. So let's move on to the opening remarks. And I'm happy to introduce Ms. Lisa Miller from the DOJ. She serves as a Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Department of Justice, the Criminal Division, with responsibility for overseeing the more than 200 prosecutors working in the department's criminal, fraud, and appellate sections. Among other things, she advised the Assistant Attorney General and department leadership on significant charging decisions and policy issues. And she's a member of the Deputy Attorney General's Corporate Criminal Advisory Group. Lisa, thank you for coming, and please give it to me.
Thank you, Daisuke, for the kind introduction. And I also want to thank the Japanese Embassy and Shinshu University for the kind invitation to me to participate in today's workshop, which would be a great event. It's really great to be with you today to discuss the department's white-collar and corporate crime enforcement efforts and policies, which are a key part of what we do in the criminal division. But to start, one area that we're very focused upon and that has enhanced greatly our ability to hold corporations and individuals accountable is international cooperation. The fight against corruption is a global one, but we're working with an ever-increasing number of foreign law enforcement partners, not only in Foreign Corrupt Practices Act cases, but across a host of investigations. And the trend toward multi-jurisdictional corporate cases is one that's been present for many years, including when our former Assistant Attorney General Brian Benchkowski led the criminal division, but it's here to stay, and it continues to increase with new partners. International cooperation increases accountability for wrongdoing by using a wider array of tools and wider range of jurisdictions, and it increases the deterrent value of our work by leaving criminals with fewer places to hide across the globe. And indeed, this, of course, includes Japan. The Department of Justice has worked closely with the Japanese government and the G7 on some of the most complex international criminal justice issues, including countering violent extremism, stopping foreign malign influence, combating child sexual exploitation, addressing cybercrime, and of course, this year, focusing on issues arising out of the unprovoked aggression of Russia in Ukraine, including war crimes and sanction evasion and support for the Ukrainian government and its people. And next month, senior department officials will be participating with their Japanese and other counterparts at the G7 for 2 meetings in Germany. And we also look forward to working with Japan closely during its G7 presidency next year. The department also enjoys great working relationships with our counterparts in Japan in the competition space. Indeed, the Japan Fair Trade Commission is our longest standing cooperation relationship in that space around the world. And certainly, last but not least, the Department of Justice is grateful for a strong relationship with Japan and its counterparts at the Ministry of Justice. We have support with our extradition and MLAT requests involving a range companies across the globe, from the UK to Brazil to Switzerland. And I say all this because of our topic today. Policy guidance that's oriented toward incentivizing crime prevention. So, as you know, just last month, the Deputy Attorney General announced several department-wide policy revisions concerning corporate enforcement. In brief, these revisions cover a lot of areas. First, how prosecutors should continue to incentivize individual accountability. Second, how a corporation's history of misconduct should be evaluated. Third, the benefits that companies can expect from voluntary self-disclosure of misconduct across the department. Fourth, how the use of monitors, including selection processes. The Deputy Attorney General also tasked the Criminal Division with 2 follow-on projects, the first of which will be evaluating ephemeral messaging systems, and that in connection with potential compliance guidance. And second, the Criminal Division is examining incentive pay, both incentives for positive behaviors, such as bonuses, and clawbacks. And there'll be more to come on that score at the end of the year and next year. I'm not going to have time to address all of these revisions today, but I do want to emphasize that many of these revisions bring consistency to the department's approach between what the Criminal Division is doing and has done and other parts of the department, including the 94 districts across this country. And nearly all of these revisions speak to the importance of corporate culture, which is, I know, a topic that you'll be hitting on today. How a tone from the top that rewards compliant behavior not only helps deter and detect white-collar crime, but also makes good business sense for companies. So I want to focus the balance of remarks on 2 of these policy revisions. First, voluntary self-disclosure, and second, recidivism, and how these pieces of the guidance interrelate, and what they indicate about why compliance promoting culture is critical. We in the Criminal Division applaud the extension of voluntary self-disclosure incentives department-wide, which is what this guidance does. As many of you know, the Criminal Division's corporate enforcement policy, which started as the FCPA pilot program and was formalized as part of our Justice Manual in 2017, recognizes the potential significance and clear benefits of timely voluntary self-disclosure. And there are many benefits, but the key incentive in the corporate enforcement policy is a presumption of a declination if a company not only timely voluntarily discloses, but fully cooperates and remediates. And unless aggravating factors that are clearly spelled out in the policy are present, the companies coming before the department who voluntarily self-disclose can rely on this presumption of a declination, and they can continue to do so under the new guidance. However, the corporate enforcement policy didn't specifically speak to what form of resolution avoid a corporate guilty plea, given this new guidance, is voluntary self-disclosure. If a company has cooperated and timely and appropriately remediated criminal conduct, even if they are recidivists, voluntary self-disclosure can be the difference between a corporate plea and another form of resolution, such as a deferred prosecution agreement, or even perhaps the difference between a deferred prosecution agreement and a non-prosecution agreement. Voluntary self-disclosure, of course, can save a lot of money for corporations as well. Through the corporate enforcement program and a declination, a company need only pay disgorgement. And if a corporation ends up getting a deferred prosecution agreement rather than a guilty plea, it may very well have a lower monetary penalty depending on the cooperation and other variables that could cause crediting. And of course, a resolution other than a guilty plea can reduce the risk of collateral consequences flowing from a corporate plea, such as suspension or debarment if relevant. So as the Deputy Attorney General said, the math is easy. Criminal division cases announced over the next few months will reaffirm, we expect, how much better companies fare when they self-disclose. We're going to be looking closely at whether companies have taken steps to report misconduct without knowledge of government investigations or news reporting in advance. Indeed, examples over the last 5 years have already made clear why self-disclosure matters. And predictability is critical to incentives for companies. Cases where companies voluntarily self-disclose include, in March of this year, the declination for Jardine Lloyd Thompson Group Holdings, or JLT, which had helped to pay over $3 million in bribes to Ecuadorian government officials in violation of the FCPA. The company detected and then voluntarily disclosed misconduct to the department. And after fully cooperating with the investigation, making it enhancements to its compliance program to reduce the risk that misconduct would recur, the department issued a declination letter. The same occurred in August 2020 with World Acceptance Corporation, which promptly self-disclosed paying approximately $4 million to third-party intermediaries for the purpose of paying bribes to Mexican Union officials. Again, the company avoided other criminal penalties and fines attendant to a criminal prosecution and only had to disgorge its profits. By contrast, our recent cases this past year, where companies did not self-disclose, resulted in different sanctions for reasons including lack of self-disclosure, but of course also cooperation issues in the nature of the conduct. To name a few examples, in May, the Glencore resolution. There were two pieces of this resolution. One component involved the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. In that case, misconduct was pervasive, spread across 7 countries and over more than a decade. There are more than $100 million in bribes paid, in payments made to intermediaries for the purpose, in part, of paying bribes to obtain and retain business. And as part of that resolution, Glencore had to pay a criminal fine of over $425 million in connection with a market manipulation scheme. Now, while the decision of whether to impose a monitor depends on multiple factors, and there was a monitorship in the market manipulation part of that case too, under the new guidance, voluntary self-disclosure can even affect that decision. It will continue to be the case that the state of a company's compliance program, specifically whether it's been tested and implemented at the time of the resolution, will be a critical factor. But the new guidance also does point to voluntary self-disclosure in the factors to consider on monitorship, and it's because the Deputy Attorney General wants to incentivize in any way possible companies to self-disclose. 2 other resolutions involving corporate guilty pleas were the Balfour Beatty Communities case, which likewise involved pervasive misconduct, and the FCA, or Fiat Chrysler Automobiles US LLC case involving emissions fraud. And again, ultimately, those cases involved a number of variables underpinning the decisions, but had those cases involved voluntary self-disclosure, under our new guidance, the outcomes may have been different. It's certainly a factor we would consider very seriously. Now, let me turn to recidivism. I want to emphasize again that voluntary self-disclosure is critical for all companies, even recidivists. When deciding appropriate resolution, the department will look at the full criminal history of a corporation as well as other history of a corporation, including regulatory history and civil history. But not all of that history is created equal. Prior wrongdoing involving the same personnel or management as the current misconduct will carry significant weight, as will prior criminal resolutions in the United States. By contrast, we'll afford lesser weight to criminal resolutions that occurred more than 10 years before the current misconduct, and civil or regulatory resolutions that took place more than 5 years before the events under investigation. And part of what our approach is getting at here is to see whether a company has learned from its past mistakes. And that was true under our old guidance, but that old guidance was focused on similar misconduct, much like the sentencing guidelines and similar prior criminal misconduct and specific civil misconduct. Here, more broadly, we want to see if the current events under investigation share the same root causes as past misconduct. We want to see if between incidents 1 and incidents 2, a company has actually remediated and taken steps to address the risks that underpin the first instance of misconduct. And we'll look to see if there's a culture of senior management tolerating misconduct. Now, our new guidance does also say that successive NPAs and DPAs will ordinarily be disfavored for the same company. But again, because we've announced in the criminal division that unless aggravating factors are present, we're going to not give companies that voluntarily self-disclose a corporate guilty plea. Those aggravating factors exclude recidivism for a reason. Even recidivists have an incentive to self-disclose under our new guidance. Every case is different. We're going to look at all the facts and circumstances. But if a recidivist company has cooperated with the investigation and timely and adequately remediated and voluntarily self-disclosed, again, that can be the deciding factor between a DPA and a guilty plea. And on the culture point, it is potentially the case that self-disclosure can be evidence of a functioning compliance program. It's not the only thing we'll look to, but it could be evidence of a culture where a company is rewarding people taking note of red flags and appropriately speaking up. Our recent efforts send a clear message. The stakes have never been higher for companies evaluating whether to self-report. As the DAG said, we want to enable chief compliance officers, general counsels, and others within a company to make the case for voluntary self-disclosure the world over. We want to make clear that it's a good business decision. In fact, if a company chooses not to self-report, we and our partners might find out about the criminality first. And at the point when we've already identified the conduct by ourselves, it is too late to get the benefits I've outlined of self-reporting. And make no mistake, we're working harder each and every day to vigorously investigate and identify criminal conduct, including with our partners across the world. We're using all tools at our disposal to support our aggressive pursuit of white-collar offenders. We use data analytics to track trends and proactively identify and spot criminal conduct. And we use data to initiate many of our investigations. We also have covert tools, which you all are aware of. And even if the government doesn't unearth the criminality on its own, someone could report it to us. Protecting corporate whistleblowers through laws similar to Japan's new whistleblower statute and incentive programs that reward whistleblowers who report corporate misconduct to regulators and enforcers have helped to send the message to corporations. The corporations that try to sweep internal reports of corporate misconduct under the rug will be found out and will be held accountable. So to sum up, as with any area of criminality, our ultimate goal is crime prevention. We want to incentivize good corporate citizenship the world over because enforcement alone cannot deter all crimes. Businesses should know that more ethical, compliant conduct also makes financial sense. Together with our partners, we'll continue to vigorously enforce the law to hold individuals and corporations accountable for criminal misconduct, while also encouraging and incentivizing corporations to invest in and foster cultures and sustainable compliance programs to detect and prevent corporate criminal conduct. I hope you all enjoyed the event today. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And, I think so what you covered so is strongly related to the topics we covered. And so in order to, incentive structure, so you have so to encourage corporations to prevent and detect corporate crimes, and to encourage companies to become a good citizen. Thank you very much. So we can move directly on to the welcome speech from the Japanese embassy. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Motosada Tano, so who is our political minister.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Motosada Matano. I'm a political minister here at the embassy. I'd like to all here this morning. This building is a historical building. As you know, it was called the former ambassador's residence, and former means before the war. So it's a really historic building. And I learned that this year marks the fourth white-collar crime workshop co-hosted by the embassy and also Shinshu University. In that regard, first of all, I'd like to thank Camila-san for excellent remarks, and also Professor Fukamizu for co-hosting. And I'm very happy to hear that this is the first time in 3 years that we are able to hold in-person meeting. So I'm pretty excited to have this one here. And as you can see from the theme of the workshop, the field of white-collar crime is wide-ranging, involving a variety of experts. There are many cases of white-collar crimes in Japan which are directly related to people's lives and thus drawing public attention. In the most recent case, the former CEO of a well-known conveyor belt sushi franchisor, Hamazushi, was arrested for taking trade secrets such as costs and procurement prices and using them at another rival conveyor belt sushi franchisor, Kappazushi, to which he had changed jobs. And to give you a vivid image of this case, as you know, Wasabi Sushi, the conveyor belt the sushi franchise here at Tyson's Corner, the price of a two-piece salmon sushi plate is $4.50. In Japan, at Kappazushi, the same two-piece salmon sushi is 75 cents. And regardless of this super weak yen, this huge price difference itself, since it's just the 75 cents, tells, and it's the average price of those conveyor belt sushis in Japan. So it itself tells how much trade secrets are involved in this price. And just to mention that, however, the global wave of inflation is seen now in Japan too. So as of this October the 1st, those sushi chains had to increase the price, and this inflation is there in Japan, and the price has skyrocketed from 75 cents to 82 cents. So the most important message here is now is the time for you to go to Japan to enjoy this price change. But in any case, even in our country, which is known for its lifelong employment system, professional CEOs, as in this case, are now increasingly, and those CEOs are increasingly moving from one company to another. So in this sense too, this case has attracted the public's attention because it's something like the CEO of McDonald's moving to Burger King and doing business. And those cases will be increasing in Japan, so we also need to follow. And one of the themes of today's roundtable session is the Deferred Prosecution Agreement, DPA. A legal procedure in Japan, similar to the DPA, is the procedures of agreement and consultation that was introduced through the 2018 amendment to the Code of Criminal Procedure. Although there have not yet been many cases using the procedures for agreement and consultation, it has been used in corporate crimes cases, attracting the interest of business people. And in addition, the courts have made cautious judgments on the credibility It's a valuable opportunity for us to hear from experts here today about the practice of DPA in the US during this roundtable session. And as this discussion is expected to be very enlightening and beneficial for us. And corporate scandals that undermine the safety and security of people's lives often come to light as a result of internal whistleblowing. For businesses, it is a good opportunity to improve their corporate value and social credibility by responding appropriately and promptly to such reports, identifying risks at an early stage, and improving the rehabilitation and repair process. In Japan, the Whistleblower Protection Act exists, as you mentioned. But as is clear from news reports, even in recent years, there has been no end to scandals, sadly. But including serious violations of laws and regulations by some businesses. For instance, the Japan Post Group has been involved in a series of scandals over the past couple of years, including defrauding customers out of 1.2 billion yen, which is $8.2 million, embezzling 600 million yen, $4.1 million in stamps, and losing over 60,000 customers' information. So in some of these scandals, it has been pointed out that there were cases in which the appropriate reporting of legal violations was not made, even though the violations were recognized, and there have been cases in which appropriate investigations and corrective actions were not taken, even though the violations were reported. In response to these circumstances, in June 2020, the Whistleblower Protection Act was revised in Japan to require by law the establishment of an effective system to respond to whistleblowing from within a business entity. I believe that today's roundtable as well on whistleblowing will be very helpful in considering the future of whistleblowing in Japan. And finally, regarding cybersecurity, it goes without saying that the internet is indispensable for businesses today, and security measures are thus also indispensable. In particular, cyber attacks, which have been increasing in recent years, have an impact on social and economic activities that cannot be ignored, such as damage not only to the company itself, but also to its business partners, or the entire supply chain is affected and corporate activities are halted. In addition, diplomacy and national security have become more and more closely linked to cybersecurity in recent years. In cyberspace, competition among nations is developing, reflecting the recent geopolitical tensions, such as the situation in North Korea or Russia's aggression in Ukraine, and the fierce competition between the United States and China. So us diplomats also need to closely monitor the situation, cooperate with the countries concerned, and consider countermeasures. In light of the situation, the Japanese government has set 4 goals of cyber diplomacy to realize a free, fair, and secure cyber spaces. 1 is to promote the rule of law. 2, taking measures to deter cyber attacks. 3, developing confidence building measures. And 4, cooperating on capacity building. And cybersecurity is an important issue for individuals, companies, and nations. And since they're all interconnected, we would definitely need to cooperate with everyone engaged here, including business leaders, lawyers, and academia. So in that regard, I have no doubt that today's session will be beneficial for all of us. The issues we discussed today are all timely, and I'm confident that having experts from both the United States and Japan present their insights toward instance based on their respective corporate and also social cultures will be very meaningful and inspiring for both the United States and Japan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matano. So introduce very unique sushi case. Thank you. And so we start the first session from 10:30, so on time. So we have 30 minutes. So I created this time intentionally. So this is an in-person event, and so you can recall that how important to communicate with each other and enjoy the conversation among experts and colleagues and friends. So please sit and come back here in the 30 minutes.
Thank you very much.